Africa, the cradle of humankind, has always been a land of immense diversity and wealth. From the gold-rich kingdoms of Mali and Ghana, to the great cities of Timbuktu, to the advanced societies of Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Benin, Africa was not a dark continent. It was a continent full of light, culture, and progress. Yet, beginning in the late 15th century and accelerating in the 19th century, European powers turned their gaze upon Africa, not as equals but as conquerors. Portuguese explorers were the first Europeans to sail around Africa's coasts in the late 1400s. They built trading posts, forts, and slave ports. Soon the Spanish, Dutch, French, and British followed. The transatlantic slave trade began, ripping millions of Africans from their homelands, transporting them in horrific conditions, and forcing them to work in the Americas. Africa became entangled in a global economic system, but as the exploited partner. By the 19th century, Europe's Industrial Revolution created an insatiable hunger for raw materials: cotton, rubber, gold, ivory, and later oil. In 1884-85, European leaders met in Berlin. At the Berlin Conference, Africa was carved up on a map by rulers who had never set foot there. No African voices were present. Within 30 years, 90% of Africa was under European rule. Britain, Egypt, Sudan, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Uganda, France, Algeria, Senegal, Mali, Ivory Coast, Madagascar, Belgium, the Congo Free State, personally owned by King Leopold II, where millions died in forced labor camps, Germany, Cameroon, Namibia, Tanzania, Togo, Italy, Libya, Somalia, Eritrea, Portugal, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Spain, Western Sahara, Equatorial Guinea. Each empire had its own style, but the purpose was the same: extraction of wealth, cheap labor, and control of strategic land. Africans did not simply accept colonization. Across the continent, resistance flared. The Zulu kingdom under Shaka and later Cetshwayo resisted British rule. The modest revolt in Sudan fought against both Ottoman Egyptian and British forces. The Herero and Namakwa in Namibia rose up against the Germans, suffering near genocide. Ethiopia under Emperor Menelik II famously defeated Italy at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, preserving independence. Colonialism was not just military control, it reshaped African life. Economy: cash crops replaced food crops. Mines and plantations relied on forced or underpaid labor. Wealth flowed to Europe. Politics: traditional kings and chiefs were replaced or manipulated by colonial governors. Artificial borders divided ethnic groups and united rivals. Culture: European languages, schools, and religions were imposed. While some Africans gained education, it often served colonial interests. In World War I, more than 2 million Africans were recruited or conscripted to fight for their colonial masters. In World War II, African soldiers once again fought in North Africa, East Africa, and Europe itself. These wars weakened European powers and exposed the hypocrisy of colonialism. After Wadi II, the winds of change began to blow. Ghana, 1957, under Kwame Nkrumah, became the first sub-Saharan country to gain independence. Algeria fought a bloody war against France, finally achieving independence in 1962. Kenya's Mau Mau uprising challenged British rule. In Portuguese Africa, independence came only after long wars and the collapse of Portugal's dictatorship in 1974. Even after independence, Africa bore heavy scars. Borders drawn by Europeans caused ethnic and political conflicts. Economies were still tied to exporting raw materials with little industrialization. Languages like English, French, and Portuguese became official, while local languages were sidelined. Neo-colonialism: Western nations and corporations still controlled trade, mining, and finance. Today, Africa is a continent of over 1.4 billion people. It holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves, 60% of its arable land, and the youngest population on Earth. But poverty, corruption, and conflict, often rooted in colonial history, still weigh heavily. At the same time, African nations are rising, demanding resource sovereignty and forging new global partnerships. European colonization of Africa was one of the most dramatic and devastating episodes in human history. It reshaped a continent, drained its wealth, and scarred generations. Yet Africa's story is not one of victimhood alone. It is also a story of survival, resistance, and rebirth. From the ashes of colonization, new nations have emerged, still struggling, still striving, but still alive with the hope of reclaiming their destiny. The question that remains for the future is not only what Europe did to Africa, but also how Africa will define itself in the centuries to come.